everybody. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Next week with Jeff Durbin. I'm Jeff Durbin, and we'd like you guys to like and share the episode if you would. Very important episode today. We're going to talk about the Florida school shooting. We have a very special guest. Let's talk about the news. You guys ready for that? Yeah. All right, here's what's going on this week, guys. President Trump announced this morning that he is running for re-election in 2020. Yay! Now, I'm not actually that excited. I just know that no other late night show is going to do that today. So there's some encouragement for you, Mr. President. That's all for you. Now, speaking of President Trump, right after Trump's re-election announcement for 2020, Stephen Colbert made a ratings announcement for 2020. As long as Trump's president, Colbert has a show, right, guys? Now, the great thing about this announcement, of course, is the campaign manager happens to be a social media guru, and he actually specializes in Twitter. His slogan is, #Make Twitter Great Again. It's a winning thing. They've learned that by now. Now, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Woo! 50 years. The kids in here right now have no idea what we're talking about. Now, the USPS will commemorate him on a stamp next month, and fans will be able to vote for their favorite stamp. It'll either be one with him in a cardigan, or it's going to be him with a cardigan. You choose. Now, the Olympics are finally over, guys. Finally over. Which means we can finally stop watching hours of TV and come up with other reasons that we can't do our New Year's resolutions. Right? Just one more reason. Now, speaking of Olympic athletes from Russia, Russia won the men's hockey gold medal. And the Russians won the medal fair and square, but half of the viewers believe that the Russians actually colluded with Trump. So it was actually recently reported that North Korea is willing to have talks with the U.S. That's good, right? Yeah. Donald Trump says he's hoping Kim Jong-un will disable nuclear weapons, and Kim Jong-un hopes that Donald Trump will disable his nuclear weapons. So, kind of a standoff. Now, a transgender female on testosterone won the girls' state wrestling tournament for a second year in a row. 2 years in a row, actually completely undefeated. Imagine that. Now, welcome to 2018, everyone, where the most successful female athletes are men without penises. It's my son. Now, since the Parkland shooting, United Airlines has abandoned the NRA, National Rifle Association. See, I thought they would have done that earlier since United Airlines prefers fist fighting anyways. Sort of how they resolve issues on United. Now, even though they don't support the NRA, United Airlines still supports Planned Parenthood. They said that they don't want to support something that might kill someone. They'd rather support something that will kill someone. Now, what's the difference between the NRA and Planned Parenthood? Well, I'll tell you. One of them sells arms, and the other supports the Second Amendment. It's a grenade joke. That's one of these things, just sort of, you got to wait for it. Now, this week on the show, we are interviewing Lauren Green, who is the corporate ambassador of Hobby Lobby. So we thought we'd do a new segment called That's Perfect for My House. So, we're going to show you signs with nice, homey phrases on them. And then we'll show you what famous person has bought it. So, let's go with the first one. This one says, "Teach me how to share." Ah, that's a nice sign. It's a good sign for a house. Let's see who actually bought it. It's Karl Marx. Okay, here's the next sign. This one says, "Color outside the lines." That sounds inspirational until, of course, you see who bought it. It's the well-known racist and creator of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. Now, she added the word keep up there, too. Keep color outside the lines. Now, here's the next one. I don't know why you guys are so upset. It's true. Okay, just kidding. Okay, it's a sign that says, "Beware of wife." And that sign is owned by Bill Clinton. I don't know if that sign is for the country or himself. This next sign is nice. It says, "The kitchen is where the heart is." I'm almost afraid to see who owns this one. It's Jeffrey Dahmer. And lastly, here's a sign with a quote from the movie The Help. It says, "You is kind, you is smart, and you is important." Well, that's uplifting. Let's see who bought that one for encouragement. It's President Donald Trump. And I believe somebody else bought it too. It's Kim Jong-un. Great, guys. We'll be right back, guys. We have a very important show today. Stay with us. Like and share the episode. Important discussions today. Very special guest. We'll see you in a minute.
What's Apologia All Access, you might ask? Well, it's kind of like being on the set of your favorite Apologia show. Maybe even wearing the jacket or sitting at the desk, hitting the gavel. Except you're not doing any of those things. You just get to watch. And I'm technically not allowed to be doing any of these things.
Welcome back to our live studio audience. Everyone watching across social media, it's time for the blend of the week, guys. This blend of the week is called coffee. It's great. Plain or with cream and sugar. That's it. That's all. Our writer was busy this week. Well, friends, it's time for another episode of Next Week and another examination of the decay of culture and the distorted and flip-floppity thinking in our day. Now, to a serious note, I am sure, like us, you are all aware of and saddened by the horrifying event that took place in Florida, in which a wicked dirtbag murdered 17 people, including classmates and teachers.
Right now, we're going to show you a short video taken inside a classroom during the shooting. Difficult to watch. It is difficult to listen to. We blurred the faces of the students.
Holy. Oh my God! Oh my God!
Now, I want to first speak to the people affected by this evil and tell you that our prayers are with you. We are all grieving with you, and we pray that you may find peace in Christ, the only hope in this broken and fallen world. Let's talk for a moment about the only workable and consistent worldview that can make sense of this tragedy, and really even call it a tragedy at all. The Christian worldview. You see, if the actual view of origins and reality being taught in the Florida public school, where this evil took place, were true, then what happened in Florida wasn't a tragedy at all. It isn't evil, and there's no meaningful and valid reason to be sad about it. What happened just happened. It's just one more random event in a universe that doesn't care about us. It's sound and fury, signifying nothing. You see, you don't need a Christian to convince you of that either. You can listen to atheist Dr. Will Provine, the professor of evolutionary biology at Cornell University. He'll tell you the same thing.
I could find no sign of there being any design whatsoever in evolution, and I immediately began to doubt the existence of a deity. But it starts by giving up an active deity, then it gives up the hope that there's any life after death. When you give those two up, the rest of it follows fairly easily. You give up the hope that there's an imminent morality. And finally, there's no human free will. If you believe in evolution, you can't hope for there being any free will. There's no hope whatsoever of there being any deep meaning in human life. We live, we die, and we're gone. We're absolutely gone when we die.
Now, it is vitally important to understand the perspective being taught at this Florida public school, and of course, schools across the nation. We teach our children that they are byproducts of evolutionary forces that didn't have them in mind, that they're bags of biological stuff, bipedal protoplasm that, according to atheist Richard Dawkins, are just dancing to our DNA. As a matter of fact, while we all know that this dirtbag is wicked and deserves justice, the actual worldview being propagated in the public school that this took place in leads to a perspective about his own wicked choices that removes any significant blame.
I don't believe there's such a thing as free will in the sense of a a ghost in the machine, a spirit or soul that somehow reads the TV screen of the senses and pushes buttons and pulls levers of behavior. There's no sense that we can make of that. I think our behavior is the product of physical processes in the brain.
Did you catch that? You see, if you actually believe the nonsense being taught to our children in these state-controlled schools, you'll eventually work out the implications, like this guy. Human beings are meat machines, and the choices we're making are the result of chemical processes in our 3-pound brains. There's no free will, which is to say, according to them, we aren't making any choices for which we are truly morally culpable. We're just fizzing. Now, speaking of fizzing, that last statement was sponsored by Atheist Soda. Get it today, or don't. It doesn't really matter because the soda was made by accident too. Now, all of us know, deep down, in the recesses of our image-bearing hearts, we aren't just fizzing. As a matter of fact, it's fully and completely foolish. Worldview matters, and as we can see, it matters a lot. We're either going to have a worldview that is consistent within itself, is actually true and comports with reality, and can make sense of our experience, or we're going to abandon all reason, hope, and consistency, and go the way of the fool and be robbed of all the treasures that are in Christ. You see, according to the Christian worldview, human beings have value, dignity, and glory. We're more than our physical parts, and the choices we make have profound meaning. And I might add, they are choices which we are all accountable for. You see, we aren't merely dancing out our DNA. We're dancing to the symphony of our Creator in a fallen world that He is actually renewing and redeeming. You see, with Christ, I get to call what this dirtbag did truly, objectively, and really evil. I get to indict him. I get to demand justice. And I have a Savior that sympathizes with me and my pain, and that He entered into this world and suffered among us and for us, experiencing all that this fallen world has to offer. You see, Jesus knows what it's like to have people with murder in their hearts pursuing Him and taking His life. Now, I want to say that, my friends, is a beautiful worldview that the Florida public school system can't even begin to touch. Now, of course, as expected, liberals and liberal media didn't skip a beat. You see, they don't want God and His Word as the foundation of their perspective and the pillar of justice. So what they do, they amped up the conversation and preyed on the emotions of their viewers and listeners, attempting to go after the tool that the dirtbag used rather than dealing with the true issue, and that is the issue of the heart. And in this particular event, they began to use teenagers, to obfuscate the issue and pull on the heartstrings of a hurting populace.
So to the politicians that you were talking about, to Senator Marco Rubio, who said after this shooting, you know, you can pass the law, but you're still going to have these horrible attacks. What do you say to him?
I say to that even though if they say that criminals get guns no matter what laws you have in place, that might be true.
Exactly. Now, I'm truly, sincerely heartbroken that these kids had to endure this indescribable and unimaginable evil. I truly am. However, should we be taking our legislative and worldview cues from people fraught with emotion and from a community that was most recently known for this?
Well, what began as a social media joke is leading to some serious concerns from doctors tonight. It involves teenagers appearing to eat laundry detergent pods and posting the pictures on social media. Doctors suggest hiding the containers or putting them out of the reach of children.
Or their teenagers. Now, this past week, liberal media sources have used emotionally distressed teenagers to create propaganda, and believe me, that's exactly what it is, to propagate their views and attempts to ultimately disarm American citizens. Now, these news sources, lacking the intellectual and statistical position of strength with their beliefs, have resorted to having mascots for their position like this. So in response to pure evil, the thinking is to remove access to the tool. The conversation about where these mass shootings are most commonly taking place seems conveniently absent. Where does a violent and evil person most likely go to perform their evil deed? Well, they go to the place where there are the most potential victims. They're called gun-free zones. Now look, I am no fan of the public school system. I think an appropriate answer for Christians is to do what God tells us to do and disciple our own children rather than letting Caesar do it. As one well-known Christian leader says, if we send our children to Caesar, we shouldn't be surprised when they come home acting like Romans. Now, we can't expect to have our children who are indoctrinated in an antithetical worldview for thousands of classroom hours and who are regularly bombarded by unbelieving thought across most popular social media platforms to fare well intellectually and spiritually when we advocate our responsibility to raise them up in a biblical worldview for worldview training done by the unbelieving state. Now, that aside for a moment, I don't want children to die. So why is it not the topic of discussion about guarding our precious children with good guys with guns? You see, when you remove the guns from the good guys and take away the equalizers, it leaves the bad guys with wicked schemes armed, and it leaves victims no better than fish in a barrel. Now, another popular and asinine argument is that we should disarm the population, do away with the Second Amendment, and put the guns into the hands of the right people. We need guns in the hands of the highly trained people who would then protect us. Unfortunately, this position cannot be sustained, and the greatest evidence at the moment is at the very school that this shooting took place.
So while this monster was roaming classroom to classroom with his rifle, mowing down students, 4 armed, uniformed deputies were sitting outside. They didn't get in there to try and save the kids. They didn't get there to try and rescue the kids after the kids had been shot. They waited for an entirely new police department to get there and go inside. There's something fishy going on here, folks. There's something going on here because I promise you, when people sign up to be sheriff's deputies, they're not doing so thinking that they're going to cower behind a car.
Now, 4 armed deputies were present outside of the school while a mass murderer was having unrestricted ability to kill other people at will. This is a travesty, my friends, travesty. And it is evidence par excellence that victims cannot and must not be dependent upon local law enforcement to A, show up in time, and B, to do anything of any real value when they get there. The community and families need to participate together in protecting the innocent. You know how to best do that? With armed citizens that can stop the bad guys when they get there. In the case of the Florida school shooting, we now know that the police failed. The FBI failed. The government agencies, they all failed.
The FBI dropped a huge bombshell today, admitting it messed up royally. Agents were tipped off that Nicholas Cruz was potentially planning a school shooting, but that tip was not followed up on. Here is what we know. The tip came in January 5th. The person the FBI describes as close to Nicholas Cruz called an FBI tip line claiming that Cruz had a desire to kill people, that he had guns, that he was acting erratically, and that he'd made these disturbing social media posts. The tip also said there was a potential of him conducting a school shooting.
The information from that public tip should have been sent here to the FBI's field office in Miami. That is FBI policy. From there, the tip should have been investigated.
Today, the FBI issued this statement saying the information was never passed along and no further investigation was conducted at that time. FBI Director Christopher Wray said, "When members of the public contact us with concerns, we must act properly and quickly." He said he's still investigating how all of this happened.
Now, worse than all of this is the suggestion being made by even Republican heroes that we should restrict access to weapons like the AR-15 to people 21 years old and over. Now, this is, of course, coming from the same man who made this promise.
They'll take away your Second Amendment, which we will never allow to happen. They'll take away your Second Amendment.
What does this do? Well, it effectively makes all women and girls under the age of 21 much easier victims. Girls in college, young women coming home from work at night in a seedy area, young married women at home alone while their husbands are gone. You see, your equalizer is now under threat. Now, make no mistake about this. Men devising wicked schemes love legislation like this. Taking away the very tool that can protect the young female victim shows the deepest hatred for young women. When I was younger, I had a female friend who was in the ladies' dorm just 2 blocks away from our studio. She shared this dorm with another 19-year-old woman. My friend left the dorm to go run some errands, and when she came back, she found her friend beaten up and raped. A man came into the female dorm, selected a room, and attacked this poor young woman. Now, unlike those who could care less about these young female victims, I don't want to see young women made to be easier victims for evil men who plot to assault them. The suggestion that this kind of legislation can affect the fallen hearts of men is as foolish as any one of Donald Trump's late-night drunk texts. They don't say anything meaningful, and they aren't convincing any thinking person. Further, the tool is not the problem. There are more people who die every year from knives, hammers, fists, and other blunt objects. Far more. The suggestion that taking away guns or restricting them could solve the problem of the human heart is pure fantasy. Human beings are sinful. Romans chapter 3 says their feet are swift to shed blood. That's our condition. In the beginning of history in the Bible, we see the story of the first murder. An AR-15 wasn't available to Cain, so he thought a rock would do just fine. You see, only Jesus can transform someone's heart. You can't legislate your way into hearts of flesh. Now, many try to appeal to the disarmament of England or Australia. However, those of us who are willing to think critically and not be consumed by our emotions can readily see that the condition hasn't changed.
Every 14 minutes, there's a knife crime across England and Wales.
That guy was right. Yeah.
This week, we investigate the knives on our streets.
Who knows what that has been used for.
This is why, look.
We witness the tension
look.
as police search for a solution.
My friend is dead, yeah, and this is what we're doing to support him, yeah, and look what they're doing. Look.
There's been a lot of knife crime. I've had 3 murders in the last couple of weeks.
So how many people rob you?
And the victims in fear.
Just say, give me your bag.
In London, knife crime is up 34% in a year, with more than 13,000 offences.
Now, many try to argue that we need to take away the tools that can cause the most damage. Great, I'll bite. That means we need to take away fists, hammers, and knives. And to that, some will argue, no. We need to take away the tools that can hurt many people in a short period of time. And to that, I only need to point to what happened at a Pennsylvania high school in which a mass stabbing caused 20 people to be injured, or to the mass stabbing in Kunming, China, in which 29 people were killed and 130 people were injured. You see, it's a problem of the heart, friends. It's sin. And the only answer is peace with God through Christ. This needs to be said clearly and boldly. It is not a Christian virtue to enact unjust statutes that ignore biblical revelation about the true problem of the heart and create more victims by disarming them and taking away their equalizers. That's not loving your neighbor. It's hating them. It shows disregard for people just like this.
The robber burst in brandishing a sawed-off shotgun. You can see 30-year-old Ashley Lee opening the cash register and putting her hands up. The robber helps himself, then heads out. But Ashley has locked the outside door by remote. That's when Ashley grabs a revolver from under the counter and hands it to her mother, Tina. They both huddle for cover. Then the robber returns and Mom lets him have it. She fires again and again.
I saw him, the rifle, and I pulled my weapon and I shot him. And then I stood up as he was walking out and I shot him again.
Look at the glass in the door shattering. The mom takes another shot. Ashley even grabs another pistol.
Suspect was shot when he came in to rob the store.
The robber punches his way through the broken glass. He wrestles with Mom, and then it's Ashley's turn to open fire. It's a life or death struggle. Mom is pistol whipped. Ashley fires again. Then he pulls the trigger on Ashley, firing at point-blank range. By some miracle, the gun is out of ammo.
I wish I could have done something sooner before he did hurt her. I feel bad about that.
Finally, we learn that many people and businesses across the nation are abandoning rationality and any connection to the biblical worldview and our own history by boycotting or cutting ties with organizations that uphold our constitutional standards, organizations like the NRA. We learn that companies like United Airlines and Delta cut ties with the NRA. However, United Airlines didn't cut ties with Planned Parenthood. Now let's get this straight. In light of the recent murder of children in Florida, United Airlines cut ties with an organization that attempts to uphold our constitutional standards that say that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. United Airlines wants to save children. However, they continue to support the organization that doesn't kill 17 children a day. They support the organization that systematically kills approximately 1,000 defenseless and innocent children in the safety of their mothers' wombs every single day. Excuse me, United Airlines, we call that hypocrisy and we aren't buying it. Now, I just want to say one last word here. When we talk about a solution as Christians, and we say things like the gospel is the solution, understand that I don't believe that is a pithy slogan or something just to be said in a cavalier way. It's just the gospel. They just need the gospel. The truth is, we need the gospel and the gospel of the kingdom. The truth that Jesus Christ is Lord of lords, King of kings, Lord over everything in every single realm, including government. He has to be obeyed there as well. Don't believe me? Read Psalm chapter 2, where God commands the kings of the earth to obey the Son, or they'll perish. You see, according to that very text, Psalm chapter 2, the Father says to the Son, ask of me, I'll give you the nations for your inheritance, the very ends of the earth for your possession. You see, that's what belongs to Jesus. And as Christians in a culture like this that is experiencing so much darkness and so much decay, our duty is to be salt and light. Now don't let that be a pithy slogan or a t-shirt either. Being salt and light means actually standing up in the culture and stopping it from spoil and decay. Speaking the truth to the culture, preaching the good news. You see, the Bible says the gospel is the power of God for salvation. It's what God uses to bring about salvation. If our culture is dead, they need to be made new creatures in Christ. They need to be made alive. And that means that Christians, you and I, are called to be light to this culture, speaking the truth into it, which means as Christians, we shouldn't be the people buying into the narratives that actually are propagated from an unbelieving foundation, a view of humans that is not biblical, a view of humans that says, well, it's a mental problem, it's a disease of the mind, or a view of humans that says something like, well, we can legislate our way into this. Brothers and sisters, if we look at one of the places that has the most strict gun regulations, a place like Chicago, we can see what legislation does to people with fallen hearts. Nothing. The answer is a new heart. The answer is a culture that loves life and not death, a culture that loves light and not darkness, a culture that loves God and not evil, and a culture that actually upholds just standards, that doesn't punish victims and innocent people because of the actions of an evil person. I don't want to see women robbed of their equalizer. I don't want to see women assaulted and beaten down, raped and destroyed because somebody was so ruled by their emotions that they took the weapon away from the victim and put it into the hands of the enemy. I want to see a just society that has just principles and standards, that loves God and loves neighbor. Is it any surprise to us that the public school system is so broken right now when they've turned their back on the only source of life and light? Is it any surprise to us that the liberal media, socialists, cultural Marxists, unbelievers don't have a coherent answer here? It shouldn't be a surprise to us because the Bible says that God's Word is the truth. Abandon it, and you and your whole culture slip off into darkness. All right, guys, this is next week. Thank you guys for watching. Stay with us for the next segment, guys. Be right back. Like and share the episode. Thank you for being with us today. much. Welcome back to our live studio audience and to everyone watching across dem internets. I'm Jeff Durbin. This is Next Week. Very special guest right now on the show. We have Lauren Green Mcafee. She is the corporate ambassador of Hobby Lobby, known to Christians worldwide. Lauren, welcome to Next Week. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So, Lauren, what's it mean? What's that title, Corporate Ambassador for Hobby Lobby? It sounds amazing, but what exactly do you do?
Yes, it's a fancy title that just means I do company communications and PR. So I get to work with a lot of great stories and share those with the company as well as the outside world.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we love Hobby Lobby, especially all of us Christmas freaks at Christmas time. And
yes.
So I'm actually always there. And I did have a question. How many Christmas trees do you think is too many?
Well, I have to say I have 8 that I put up in my house. So definitely at least 8 is okay in my books.
Okay, well that sounds like a problem to me, Lauren. 8 Christmas trees. So just a question, it's on my mind. Just why around Christmas time do you sell synthetic squirrel tails? Is there a big market for that?
I have no idea about the synthetic squirrel tails.
I'm just wondering if the factory that's house producing those does damage to your bottom line if they do stop. So we wanted to have you on today because you guys are just doing so much. I mean, for us, we know about the Green family, your family, and we know just really, about the amazing business model of Hobby Lobby and the kinds of things that you're doing. We also know, of course, about the recent legislative battle, the fight you guys had in terms of standing up for your convictions in the area of healthcare. And we also know, of course, that you guys, your family, has one of the largest privately owned collections of biblical artifacts really on the planet. And so it really is compelling. I guess let's start the discussion off this way. Talk to us, if you would, about the fairly recent conflict where you guys were really trying to hang on to your convictions really as believers with a successful company in terms of what the government was asking you guys to do.
Absolutely. So what you're referring to is what's often called the Hobby Lobby court case, Hobby Lobby Supreme Court case. And that all began back in 2012 whenever the HHS mandate or Obamacare was handed down. And after we got to understand what this meant, we realized that that mandate would require us to provide the 20 FDA-approved contraceptive drugs and devices. Now, Hobby Lobby was already giving a wonderful benefits plan to our employees that did cover 16 of those contraceptive drugs and devices. It was only 4 of the 20 FDA-approved materials that we did not want to provide because we realized that those were abortifacient in what they did, actually. So because of our convictions, our deeply held religious convictions, we had to make the decision, do we provide these 4 drugs and devices that go against our deeply held religious convictions? Or do we say, no, we're going to fight this and fight for the ability to follow those religious convictions? And following our faith in business has always been something that has been a key at Hobby Lobby for my family.
That's right.
My grandpa founded the company on his own over 40 years ago, and he's continued to live out his faith and his biblical principles every day of the business ever since. So we were nervous that we were not going to be able to continue to live that out, but thankfully we have seen the victory in the court system. We went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we did have the 5-4 decision in favor of Hobby Lobby's case.
Right
so
on.
we do get to live out our faith, thankfully.
Well, I guess the good thing, and just thank God for that victory there, that we would probably love to hear about is just how this affected your faith, your walk with Christ. I mean, it was a pretty intense legal battle. I mean, when we had when this was happening, we were talking about it on a radio program, encouraging people to be prayerful about it and to get engaged in the issue. But give us sort of a behind the scenes. What was it like for you guys to be really the focus of much of the nation and the media in this fight? What was it like for your relationship with Christ and being Christians with this very successful business and business model? Just tell us about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked because you mentioned that you were asking people to pray. And so every time I get to speak about this, I just want to thank any of the listeners or people I'm talking to that our whole family is so grateful for those that were praying with us. We felt the prayers of people all over the country and really all over the world. We had many people reach out to us that were supporting us. So while we may have been on the quote unquote front lines of this particular issue, we know that we were not alone in the journey. We had many people walking alongside us, so we're grateful for that. But yes, as a family, it really was an interesting season. It was a 2-year process from the time when we first began this battle to the Supreme Court decision. And all of our experiences in the lower courts, we lost in all of those court decisions. So it was no cakewalk. It was very stressful at times, but ultimately we all realized we have to put our faith in the God that we believe in and trust that He is in control of this. And that gave a lot of peace. And also just the prayers of people all over the country really made a difference in bringing us peace through all of it. So we knew that we had to live out our convictions, and whatever happened in the end, God was going to be good. And so one particular story, we found a passage in the Bible that was particularly meaningful whenever Daniel is facing again, kind of a similar situation, the government of his day, saying that he had to do something against his faith. And he stood for what he believed in. And so we put Bible verses around the campus and would share Bible verses with each other as a family, and even bought a billboard across the street from where our corporate office is and placed a Bible verse on there just to give us encouragement that people before us and people in Scripture have followed God, and God takes care of His people. Even if it may not be the way we expect it to be, He is still in control.
Oh, that really blesses me, Lauren. I got to tell you, I mean, I know we're not, very familiar with one another, but I do want you to know, and there's people in the studio right now, that we all remember doing episodes really trying to sound the alarm and encourage people to get involved and to pray. And being on the other side of the trial now and seeing your faithfulness and seeing you guys stand up for your convictions and ultimately refusing to bow to the state in the way that you did is just such a tremendous encouragement to me. And I just want to hopefully bless you with that. It is such an encouragement to us in a time and a circumstance that we live now where so often Christians divide really the world up into the secular, the sacred, the secular, the spiritual. And so many would be willing to let go of their convictions in an area like this because there's a potential for a loss of business, loss of capital, and you're taking a stand and being salty and being light in this area is really a tremendous blessing to us. So thank you guys for your faithfulness. And now let's get to the really cool thing. This is exciting for me. I know all about your family, and in terms of not just Hobby Lobby. That sounded kind of creepy, didn't it? That sounded creepy. I know all about your family, Lauren, every detail, and where you keep your credit cards. I know all about the Green family because I'm a pastor and a theologian, an apologist, a philosopher, and so engage in a lot of apologetic stuff. And what excites me so much about the Green family, your family, many of us know who are in these circles that the Green family has this amazing collection of biblical artifacts. Your family has been faithful stewards of what you have actually gained and actually been able to produce some amazing finds, biblical manuscripts. I mean, so much stuff that has many people don't know, has actually changed the landscape in many respects in terms of like manuscripts that are extant, that go way back and closer to the time of Jesus and the actual writing of the New Testament. It really is awesome. And so I'm kind of a freak about these things. And so I'm super excited. So with that large collection of things and what you guys have invested so much in as a family, you now have in our nation's capital, you have the Museum of the Bible.
That's right.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so ironically, we were beginning the journey towards Museum of the Bible right whenever we were in the middle of the Supreme Court situation. So it was around the same time that we were traveling to and from DC for the Supreme Court and all the oral argument and everything that we were buying a building there in DC for the purposes of Museum of the Bible. So it did start as a private collection, and that was kind of the impetus for what is now the museum. But it is the largest private collection one of the largest private collections in the world of biblical materials and artifacts. And that collection is the foundation for what is on display in Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. today. So the Museum of the Bible is an 8-story building that is 430,000 square feet of space that is all dedicated to the Bible. It opened in Washington, D.C. just a couple months ago in November of 2017. And in the first 2 months of the museum being opened, we saw 250,000 people go through, and people have been really enjoying it. This is a museum that is not just a boring place with some dusty materials. This really brings the Bible to life.
Yes.
It is one of the most technologically advanced museums in the world, and it's incredibly engaging, and all of the environments are very immersive, and it actually invites you into the stories as you walk through. So I think that there's something for everyone, even if they're not interested in the Bible or of no faith at all. But there's also something for people of all ages, backgrounds, you name it. There's something for everyone at Museum of the Bible.
Awesome. I was at a conference in Tennessee, and your family had sort of a mini exhibit there, like covered up and dark and everything. And I remember going inside this and seeing some of those artifacts and manuscripts, and it was just absolutely astonishing. And I mean, there was a sort of a bit of trembling involved in walking up to these items that were carried by Christians, and it's just an incredible thing you guys have invested in. Let's do something kind of fun here. I want to ask you, tell us some of the very interesting things that we will find in the Museum of the Bible, because maybe some people think that sounds boring. I find it delightful, but I'd love to just hear what kind of interesting things are inside the museum.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and there are a million different answers I could give you. But in the museum, the main 3 exhibit floors talk about the history of the Bible. So how did we get this book? What is the history that brought it to us? We also have the floor that talks about the narrative of the Bible. So what are the stories from Genesis to Revelation? And then we also talk about the impact of the Bible. So I think that some of the unique things that you'll find is that there are video docents all throughout the museum, and those will guide you. Even David Stott, who drives through history, does the Drive Through History TV program, he did a drive through the Bible. And so you can find his video vignettes all over the museum. But I think that one of my favorite parts about the museum is the Old Testament walkthrough. So this is a timed 45-minute experience where you start, we let a group of 15 people in every 5 minutes, and you start at the beginning of the Old Testament, and you actually walk through from gallery to gallery, an experience that brings you through the story of the Old Testament. It's incredible. It's very theatrical. People from Disney helped us put this together.
Oh, wow.
Everyone is sure to enjoy it. So that's there's a burning bush that looks very realistic that you'll see whenever you're going through. So it's a really incredible experience. But that's just one sample of what's on the narrative floor, but there are great experiences like that on every level of the museum.
I'm really so excited about this. I just cannot wait to see the whole thing finished, because we knew years ago that it was happening. It was sort of underway and under construction, and we saw bits and pieces, and we were absolutely thrilled. So let's let you give the pitch, Lauren. Why should people get on a plane and come to the nation's capital to go to the museum?
The Bible has impacted every area of our world, whether it's technology, science, fashion, art, literature, you name it, even in ways we don't even realize. So whether you're interested in the Bible or not, but I think that a lot of listeners are interested in the Bible, it's an incredible experience to get to walk through the Bible and really experience it in a new way. So we hope that everyone will come experience the Bible. It would take 9 8-hour days to see everything in the Museum of the Bible and read it. So we realize most people are not going to give us that much time. But come and at least spend a few days with us. We've got a restaurant, a coffee shop, a theater where you can see shows. We've got so many things for families to enjoy. So we hope that you'll also follow us on social media. Museum of the Bible has a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and that can also give you a little glimpse into some of the incredible history and story of the Bible if you're not able to make it to Washington, D.C.
Okay, so 2 more questions, Lauren. One, can you tell me, because I'm just total geek about this thing, can you tell me of an interesting manuscript that's in the museum, or just something with some history behind it that's just really compelling?
Absolutely. So my favorite artifact that is a manuscript is called the Codex Climaci Rescriptus, We bought it from an auction house in London that was being sold from Cambridge University. It is a manuscript that has been rewritten on. So it was an early form of recycling, actually. This is made out of vellum, which was on animal skin. It was written in the 6th century in 2 languages. That was Syriac and Palestinian Aramaic. And then in the 9th century, someone tried to erase that text and rewrote on top of it in Greek. There are portions of the Bible on this manuscript in both layers, and it's fascinating to be able to find some of the largest portions of the Bible in Palestinian Aramaic on that underneath layer that is only accessible through modern technology called multispectral imaging. So we're able to read a text that's mainly been hidden for centuries, but because of technology, we can now access it. So it's just that's just one example of a really fascinating artifact that has been a recent discovery thanks to modern technology that this manuscript had never been read before. And there are portions of it on display in the museum.
Fantastic. And the next thing is we have social media platforms and connections really worldwide with the audience that watches us, whether it's on the NRB network or across Facebook and YouTube. And I would love for us to be able to come out there and to film the experience of the museum ourselves and see it, to promote it so that the whole world can see it. So it's
come on over.
Not really a question. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. That's all.
That's great.
So, all right, Lauren Green Mcafee. Lauren, where do people go just to get more information and to find out how to get tickets and location? Where should they go? The main site.
Yeah, museumofthebible.org will have all of the information as well as links to our social media feeds.
All right, Lauren Green Mcafee, everybody. Thank you so very, very much. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys for watching next week. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Important things on the other side of this. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching. This week, I want to encourage everybody to go over to YouTube. Check out Apologia Studios on YouTube, Apologia Studios on Facebook. Share and like the content. Get the message of the gospel out to the ends of the earth. As always, I want to point you all to endabortionnow.com. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's right. That literally scared me to death, actually. We have a lot of people who don't like us. When you hear loud bangs like that, you start to think things. Wow. Yeah, it's my birthday. Yeah. Right on. Only 25 years old today. It's wonderful. Thank you, guys. That was wonderful and terrifying. Point you guys over to endabortionnow.com. That's the heart of this entire show. Our desire is to engage the culture with the biblical worldview and to end the culture of death on, of course, many levels, but fundamentally in the area of abortion, where there are over 3,000 children that are killed every day in our nation. And it's our duty as Christians, as the church, to engage that issue. Francis Schaeffer has actually a very popular statement, and it was very challenging to me. I want to share it with you. He said that over every abortion facility in America reads the sign, "By permission of the church." And that's a challenging thing. To know that we have the message of life, the message that changes hearts and minds, and that it's up to us to share that message, to communicate that message so that there's actually transformation. You know, I often share, right now at the end of the show, I share stories of churches that are linked up with End Abortion Now that have gotten the free training and the free resources at absolutely no cost to them whatsoever. It's just Apologia Church wanting to bless them. I share stories like a group that's on their 42nd save right now, or their 20th save, or 140th save. You know, these stories, of course, are very, very important. They're very important. They're encouraging. They're inspiring. But to be honest, we don't even have the ability to share all the amazing things that God is doing. I want you to consider this, that since we started as a church engaging this issue, there have been thousands of lives saved because people just like you, watching this show, were inspired and encouraged and challenged by what you heard. You got involved. You went out, you brought the gospel to the abortion mill, you started saving lives, you love those mothers and fathers, and you know all that has taken place has transformed things in ways that are irrevocable. They can never be changed. And so people just like you have listened to these stories. They've gone to endabortionnow.com. They've gotten connected. Will you do the same thing? Endabortionnow.com, you get all the free training, you get all the free resources. And I also want to encourage you with endabortionnow.com. We have right now a little ways to go for our funding goal. I want to encourage you guys, if you have any commitment to this ministry and a desire to serve and to help, I want to encourage you to go over to endabortionnow.com and give there at the Donate tab. Help us to make our goal for this year so that we can continue to bless the church, to equip the church, and to once and for all end abortion in our nation. Thank you guys for watching. Next week with Jeff Durbin. Thank you guys so very much. One more thing. I don't want to forget this. We are taking a 2-week break because, well, a number of things. We have some interesting things planned for End Abortion Now. But our executive producer, Marcus Pittman, is getting married. Yeah! He's getting married. So a 2-week break. We will be back. What's the date again, Chris? It's March the 20th? March the 20th, we'll be back, guys. Make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. We have a very exciting season planned for you guys this season, and we can't wait to share it all with you guys. We will see you when we get back, guys. Like and share the episode. Thank you guys so much for watching.